Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, our humble apologies for the late start. We were just having some technical issues while we were getting started. Um, for those that may just be joining us for the first time, this is the Department of Inland Revenue's training sessions on VAT education, which we're going to be running for the entire month. Today, we're beginning our second module, which is module two, looking at the process of VAT registration. And I'm going to do some housekeeping. But before we get started, I just want to start with a quick word of prayer. Father God, we thank you for your grace and mercy. We thank you for those that are here. We thank you for those that are tuning in. Oh, we pray the information that is shared, oh God, will be educational, oh God, in a system and a better understanding of God in all aspects of it. We pray that you guide us and keep us as we present the information, oh God, to help it, oh God, to be helpful by your grace and mercy in Jesus. Um, just want to make sure that as we're getting started, the persons online can hear me clearly and fine. Good. Okay. So, just a little bit of housekeeping, real quick. So, each of the modules, go into it. So, we'll be going through basically 7 to 8 modules looking at the different aspects of VAT. Our first module was an introduction, talking a little bit about the history of VAT, what VAT actually is. And today's module will be on VAT registration. Each of the modules will be about 2 to maybe 3 days that we go over because we're not trying to rush through the information. We want to take our time, make sure that those persons that are about 25, 30 persons, because you may get your questions answered a little faster while you're inside the room, to be a part of the VAT education and the VAT training. After every module is sent to those persons that are actually registered is the link and the PDF links with the slides and the presentation. So we'll send that and share that information because we want you to have that, as well as copies of the YouTube links for the presentation so you can go back over if you happen to have any inquiries or you feel free to share it. If you have any questions and you're on YouTube, we encourage you to just drop it inside the group and in the chat. If we're not able to actually answer right then we'll make sure follow up and provide any answers to any inquiries that you actually need. Again, I haven't introduced myself. My name is Beaumont Todd. I am the Training and Communications Manager here at the Department of Revenue. So what we're looking to do for this entire month is to make sure that we go through every aspect of VAT to make sure persons understand and demystify anything when it comes to VAT, the VAT filing process, how you should keep your records and everything else. We ask persons as they are part of the sessions at the end of it, if you've completed all of the quizzes. So after every module, we will also be sending out a quiz for persons to actually complete to show that you actually went through the information. You will get a certificate at the end of the training, but that is only if you've completed all of the quizzes and have at least a 70% rating for the quizzes. At the end of the day, we encourage persons to please invite and share anybody else that may be interested a part of it to be a part of the YouTube session. So again, like we said, in person because we want this information to be shared. So looking at today's module, module two, we'll be talking about the VAT registration process. So our objectives today is one, to identify who is required to register for VAT, differentiate between the types of registration, navigate between the online registration process using our OTAS, list the required documents that you actually need, recognize common registration mistakes, and understand post-registration responsibilities. Now, we're most likely going to get through most of this today, and then we'll complete the rest of it tomorrow. Today, we'll definitely go through the steps of registering online with our OTS process. And tomorrow, we'll do the demo version where we'll actually do in the live environment, showing persons how you actually go through to register for the VAT process on our website. So let's ask the question, who needs to register for VAT? A lot of the information may seem repetitive at different points in times because what we want to make sure is that persons have a complete understanding of who is required to register for VAT and why they are actually required to register for VAT. I've been so used to working without a clicker, now I got a clicker, I know what to do. So, who is considered in business for VAT? So a person or an entity is considered in business for VAT purposes if they are engaged in a continuing activity that involves making supplies of goods or services in exchange for payment. A one time or isolated sale does not qualify for as in business. Say, for example, you happen to sell your car or something like that, that does not qualify. So, first of all, let's take a step back because it all ties together. Let's talk a little bit about what is a business. So, any profession, any calling, any vocation, any occupation, basically anything at the end of the day that you do to make a sale or sell some type of service or some type of product is basically at the end of the day a form of business. Even our friends them who's be on the street selling their water and they peanut, they still require to have a business license. And if they don't at this point in time, take note. We just let you know. We don't want to interrupt anybody's way of living, but everybody that is required to do any type of business in the Bahamas is required to have a business license. And it is not difficult, especially if you're doing open and honest business at the end of the day to get a business license. So, who needs a business license? All persons, let me say it again, all persons conducting business in or from within the Bahamas must be granted a license in accordance with the requirements of the Act. So depending on the type of business that you're doing, will require the fact that you need to have certain documentations in order for you to get your business license. And this is important because as we go into this part of talking about the business license, it will also directly tie into how you register for your VAT. So there are three types of business licenses that you can get. It is the regular annual business license, which is granted, I should say, to applicants who regularly carry on business. Is the occasional, which is granted for a period of no more than 7 days, and you can get that up to about 4 times a year. An example of the occasional license would be when we all know summer coming. So when we have these regattas, these different pop-ups and different things, even when persons are selling their school supplies on the park and different things, they would be required, if they don't have an annual business license, to get an occasional business license. Now, in addition to the regular occasional business license, which is actually $25 for the regular occasional, you also have an entertainment license when persons have concerts and different things, which is actually $750. In addition to that, you have a temporary license, which is granted to foreign individuals and companies. So, some of the documentation that you need when you're applying for your business license. First of all, you need your trade name approval. You would need your NIB registration certificate. You would need either approval from Physical Planning, Ministry of Works, Environmental Health, and the Royal Bahamas Police Force. And this isn't all of the regulators. We like to remind persons that although the process starts with the Department of Inland Revenue for the trade name, we are not the regulators. We are just, at the end of the day, the facilitators. So all of the different agencies that you see are the ones that are really the regulators. And depending on what type of business that you actually do, will determine at the end of the day the type of business license, excuse me, and the regulators that you actually need. Could you get me some water? So, say for example, with the Royal Bahamas Police Force, if you're selling any type of alcohol, of course, you'll need approval from them. And even when you go in the parks and different things, for those short-term stuff, you still need approval from them as well as beach and parks. So requirements for new business license, of course, would be proof of the Bahamian citizenship, your passport, your NIB, your voter's card, approval by the Bahamas Investment Authority for foreign persons and companies, a lease, a rental agreement for the business location or proof of ownership, showing your address, and copy of a certificate of incorporation. Excuse me just one second. Brandon? All right. Sorry and apologies about that. I ain't gonna throw my staff under the bus and say they had me here choking inside. I ain't called no names. Okay. So let's look at some of the documentation again that you need. And the reason these are important is because at the end of the day, some of these same documentation is the same things that you're going to need when you have to register for VAT. So who needs to register for VAT? Businesses must register for VAT if their annual taxable turnover is 100,000 or more. This includes the value of all taxable goods and services sold, not just profits. Basically, your entire turnover is accounted for as a part of your VAT. Not after expenses have deducted out. Your gross turnover is what's looked at. The 100,000 is based on a 12-month rolling period, not just a calendar year. Say, example, a grocery store with 150,000 in annual sales, a construction company billing over 100,000 for taxable service, or a consultancy firm with multiple corporate clients exceeding the threshold. Even if you're only operating for a few months, if your sales are projected to hit 100,000 within the year, you're expected to register. The law about actual and forecasted revenue. Now, the one thing I always have to continuously remind persons of when it comes to this, and the reason we're going from the business license aspect is, a lot of times persons believe it is their business license that they're actually paying VAT on. It's not their business license, it's their TIN, which is their tax it's their tax identification number. Say, for example, you're a business and you're a sole proprietor, and you have 5 businesses. And this happens a lot of times. Whereas the person looks at their business and they say, well, I only have about 5 businesses, but each of them only make about 20,000. When you look at them collectively as a group, those businesses add up to 100,000 because all of those businesses are under one particular TIN for that sole proprietor. Okay? Say they get a partner. That's another TIN. That's a completely different entity. So if that partnership only makes 50,000, and I'll ask the persons in the room, do they pay VAT on both of them or they pay VAT on one of them? They pay VAT on one of them, which would be basically the businesses. Collectively, that's over 100,000. So if Granny decides, and this happens a lot on the islands and in Nassau, so Granny decides to have Granny shoe shine, hair shine, foot shine, teeth shine, and every other shine she can think of. Collectively, each of our businesses under that particular tin would be what is accounted for that 100,000. So if you have a couple of your businesses that are 99,999.99 cents, and one business makes $1 that pushes you over the threshold, then all of your businesses under that particular tin have to register for VAT as well as charge for VAT. So I want to get that out of the way because as we get into talking about the mandatory and the different types of registration, that's something important for persons to remember. So types of taxable supplies would be your goods and services supplied within the Bahamas, some services provided in the Bahamas but not consumed abroad. Some fall under the standard 10% and also now the 5% rate or 0 rated VAT. Exempt supplies would be examples such as tuition and insurance that do not count towards the VAT threshold. An example of this would be a private school that's running a bookstore and a cafeteria. The bookstore and the cafeteria food sales are taxable, but any tuition that's made inside that school would not be taxable. Boy, they ain't give me this water with a good heart, Lord. I gotta pray. So, who needs to register for VAT? First of all, let me say it again. Your taxable supplies exceeded 100,000 in the past 12 months on the last day of any month. You reasonably expect to exceed the 100,000 threshold within the next 365 days. You must register within 14 days of meeting this condition. So we encourage persons, if you know within a year, say you're in your second quarter, your third quarter, and you see that you're approaching the threshold, it's just easy to say register then instead of waiting till after, because then after you have 14 days to actually register. And if it's found that you already crossed the threshold and the time has passed, then you put yourself in a position to file. You'll receive penalties or fines for being non-registered. And there is also different type of registration that you can possibly fall under for that particular category. We encourage persons at the end of the day that you can register for VAT even if you're not over the threshold. So let's look at the different types of registration. So there are 4 types of registration that that you have when it comes to registering for VAT. The first one is the mandatory registration. The second is voluntary registration. The third, which we try to avoid, is forced registration. And the last is tin-only registration. So for the first one, the mandatory registration, again, is you're required by law for any business that exceeds 100,000 over the past 12 months, or you're expected to exceed the 100,000 within 365 days. You must register within 14 days of crossing the threshold. This applies to sole traders, partnerships, companies, nonprofits, and taxable activities. Failure to register on time may result in backdated VAT charges, penalties, as well as interest. So we encourage persons, if you see that you look like you're approaching the threshold, to make sure at the end of the day that you just voluntarily register for what needs to be done. The other type of registration is voluntary registration. So even if your business does not exceed the 100,000, you still have the ability to actually voluntarily register for VAT. And you must demonstrate a few things. First of all, to have a fixed business location, conduct or will conduct taxable activities. You can keep proper accounts, and you can file regular and accurate returns. And supporting documents for when you're filing for this type of registration would include your utility bill, or proof of address, your sample VAT invoice template, financial projections. And this is ideal for growing businesses and supplies for VAT registration clients, because you have the opportunity, if you're a small business, to actually register for VAT and have the opportunity to claim input VAT. Whereas if you're a small growing business and you're doing business with other businesses that are charging VAT, if you're not registered, you can't claim inputs for your VAT at the end of the day. So some benefits of registering for it. First of all, it's available to businesses earning less than 100,000 annually. It's especially helpful for startup businesses that may have a high input cost, which means you're making less sales than you are for purchases. So say, for example, your sales was only maybe $2,000, but your purchases add up to $5,000. That means that you put yourself in a position whereas, because you're registered for VAT, you can actually claim input VAT, which would actually be a refund that comes back to you as a small business, which is actually a help to you. Vendors who want to claim VAT refunds, small businesses working with VAT registered clients. Again, if you're a business that's working with VAT registered clients, you also have the ability to claim input VATs, even if you're not over the threshold, versus you're doing business as a small business, you're not registered. That means any client that you work with at the end of the day that may be charging you VAT, you are not able to claim those back at the end of the day, especially when you're in a position where you're just getting started, and at that particular point in time, what you're actually expending may actually make more. And most persons know when a business gets started, it's usually between the first 2 to 5 years that you really see whether the business is going to grow or not. So that's something to consider as well. And then, of course, voluntary registration is strategic. It gives small businesses the chance to grow with the right systems already in place, because you then have the opportunity to develop in your business, if you're looking to grow, the systems that you need when your business does grow, the type of accounting systems that you need, the type of record keeping that you need to make sure that you have already in place when you happen to hit over that 5 million, because I claim it 5 million for me and everybody else in the room. That's just a low ball number. We go 5. But to make sure at the end of the day, you're in a position where your business is already aligned to grow. And then, of course, my least favorite is forced registration. If you meet the threshold, but you fail to register, the comptroller of VAT can register you without your application. And this, of course, leads to retroactive tax charges, potential fines, or penalties. So let me say it again. If you look like you're already approaching the threshold and think that you're going to go over, take the opportunity to register. It is not a difficult process. And at the end of the day, if you need assistance, that's why the Department of Inland Revenue is actually here to assist, so that you don't go over past the deadline and then you get charged fines, or worse, you have to be forcefully registered, and then you still are going to incur fines. If you're not sure about the process, we encourage persons at the end of the day to please contact us, and we'll be glad to assist and share any information that's needed. In addition to that, if you're doing business with anybody that is charging VAT and they are not registered for VAT, we also encourage you to also inform us and let us know at the end of the day, because this needs to be protected for both the consumers as well as those that are doing and compliant with business, because it's unfair to those persons and the consumers. And the last type, of course, is TIN-only registration. So some businesses and individuals do not need to charge VAT, but they still require a tax identification number. And common examples of this are charities and nonprofits, the Grand Bahama Port Authority licensees or businesses that may fall under the Grand Bahama Port Authority for the use of claiming refunds, embassies and diplomatic missions, commercial importers, VAT refund claimants, and business representatives acting on behalf of taxpayers. A TIN-only registrant cannot collect or charge VAT. And I want to take this moment to remind persons that on our website, we have a list, and it is a continuously updated list of, first of all, VAT registrants of businesses that are registered for VAT. And then in addition to that, we have a listing of businesses that are TIN-only on our VAT site as well. And just a reminder, a TIN-only registrant cannot collect or charge VAT. These entities cannot charge VAT, but they may still submit filings or receive refunds. So let's look at taxable versus exempt activities, because these at the end of the day will determine whether or not you can actually even register for VAT. Because if the type of business that you're doing is an exempt activity, say example like how we talked about the school and tuition, then you cannot register for VAT at the end of the day. So taxable activities include most goods and services sold by businesses such as retail products, professional services, repairs and construction, hospitality and entertainment. Businesses engaged in taxable activities must register if they meet the threshold. Exempt activities. Certain services are exempt and cannot register for VAT. This includes specific financial services, example, those that have interest income, educational services, medical services, and charitable services. Okay, so let's also look at the type of rate when you register for VAT that actually applies to you. So there are two rates and two types. You have the standard versus the flat rate filing. We started talking about these a little bit when we were doing the introductory, but let's just go a little deeper. With the standard rate, your filing is detailed VAT revenues, which will report your output VAT, which is your sales collected from your customers, and you will report your input VAT, which is paid on your purchases or any of your expenses, and remit the difference to the government. So say, for example, again, say your output VAT is $10,000 and your input VAT is $8,000, the difference of $2,000. So the 10% of that would be $200, which is what would be remitted to the government of the Bahamas. And then, of course, we have the flat rate scheme. It's a simplified approach where businesses pay a fixed percentage of gross sales as VAT. Input VAT is not claimed separately and is intended to reduce record keeping for file types and helps you to anticipate future changes. Okay, let's see. All right, hold on a second. All right, Brandon, let me just pause a quick sec. Just need to make Okay, sorry about that. So let's look at the two rates. I realized that there was some information that was missing, and we just wanted to update that. All right, so Brandon, we will go to the flat rate and the standard rate. So look for the slide with the standard rate. Here we go. You got it? Okay. Sorry about that. So continuing on. The standard rate, the file is detailed VAT returns. We talked about this. Our report input VAT paid on business purchases and remit the difference. The next slide that I didn't want you to miss was this one right here for the standard reporting. So the register reports all of their taxable supplies and can claim their input VAT paid on the taxable supplies related to the business. Right now, we have two standard rates, which is the 10%, our regular 10%, and then our 5% for non-prepared food items. And of course, that can be consumed by a human being. We have to be specific with that, and that does not include alcohol. Then we have our flat rate scheme. It's a simplified approach where businesses pay a fixed percentage of gross sales as VAT, and the input VAT is not claimed separately. It's intended to reduce record keeping for small businesses. So, say for example, and the flat rate is 6.5% is applied to the VAT inclusive sales turnover to calculate. There's no operating inputs are allowed under this scheme. So with this particular flat rate, the flat rate allows you to charge, instead of you having to calculate your inputs and your outputs, you only calculate basically your outputs, and you calculate that by 6.5%, and that is basically what it is that's remitted to the government for the flat rate. Now, the benefits of it is a very simplified system because you're not having to track your inputs and your outputs. You cannot claim inputs, which means you can't claim basically at the end of the day any of your expenses. But the good part about it is at the end of the day, if you're a business and you have to look at the difference, which one makes more sense for your business, whether it's doing the standard or doing the flat rate. With the flat rate at the end of the day, basically you're only looking at what your gross turnover is. You're still charging the 10% or the 5%, depending on the sales items that you make, to the actual customer. But say, for example, you charge the 10%. When it's time for you to actually do your output, you only multiplying it by the 6.5%, and the difference stays with you, and you only send to the government the 6.5%. Is that clear? Any questions on that before I move on? So let's talk about that. I'm glad you asked the question. The question was asked, how do I qualify for the flat rate? Oh, we got a new mic. Oh, we got new toys in the room.
Okay, my question is, how do a business qualify or apply for the flat rate filing?
Okay, so let's look at it. So for the flat rate, the requirements are as follows. First of all, you are not a port licensee, the Grand Bahama Port licensee. You're not a deferred VAT registrant. You're not a zero-rated or exempt supplier. You're not a part of a VAT group registrant, and we'll talk about the VAT group aspect later. Your VAT filings and payments are up to date. Your business license filings and payments are up to date, and your turnover is below 400,000. Okay. Any questions about that before I move on? That's also for persons online. Any questions about that before we move on?
Previous.
Sure.
Okay, as far as the
Mhm.
um, I don't understand all of excuse me, all of what is said here, the deferred VAT registered, the zero VAT or them, the VAT group registered. I guess I have to understand all of those.
So when we go
So when we
into
go into
the VAT filing, we'll explain those a little bit, but this is just to give you a general idea of what basically the requirements actually are. So for each of the modules, certain aspects we may mention earlier, but then we'll get a little bit more deeper. Even with this, when it comes to the registration, we mention it as a part of the introductory, but now we're really going into what those things are. The things to really pay attention to in this regards is, first of all, you're not a port licensee, which means you don't fall under the Hawksbill Creek Agreement or the Grand Bahama Port. Yes. In addition to that, you're not a deferred VAT registrant. So we'll explain that a little bit later when we talk about the VAT filing aspect. And you're not a zero-rated or exempt supply. An exempt supply would be an example of school. A school that does tuition, because tuition is actually exempt from VAT, so they can't apply for this flat rate. You're not a VAT group registrant. That I'll explain in a few moments. So we'll talk about the VAT group aspect. And then the other things are straightforward. Your regular filings and payments are up to date. Your business license filings are payment up to date. And your turnover overall is below 400,000. So besides those first two, that is everything else clear about it for you. Okay. Any questions online though, before we move forward as well? I want to make sure that persons understand and we're not rushing. Uh-huh. Okay. I would say this, as long as the revenue is below 400,000 and you do not fall into the exempt supply or zero rated, it should not be a problem. But I will, huh? Oh, sorry. The question was, do you, as an HOA, do you qualify for the flat rate? So I was saying to the persons listening in, as long as you are below the turnover of 400,000 and you do not fall into one of these categories, then you should be able to qualify. But I'll still check and verify that for you. I don't want to just answer that flat out. I know one of our general processing ladies should be in the group. They may be able to answer that faster for me. But either way, we'll get the answer for you to clarify. Any other questions before we move forward? Okay. Okay. So let's talk about the special category of VAT grouping. So this is the one we were talking about. With the VAT grouping is a privilege that must be approved by the controller that permits a group of related entities, companies, or partnerships to apply to be treated as a single taxable person for VAT purposes. So say, for example, you have a limited company and you have a number of different franchises, say like how we have Domino's and they have a number of different franchises. Of course, each of the businesses have to have their independent business license, and as well, if they're charging VAT, they have to have a VAT certificate for those. What the owner of the group can actually do then is apply to the Department of Inland Revenue to have all of them grouped as one entity, whereas they would be a VAT grouping. So when they actually put in their filing, instead of having individual filings, you would have one filing, but the information would include all of those different groups that are part of that grouping. Is that clear? Or yes. So it just means you would have to have your tracking from all of your different entities. And when you file, you just file one VAT filing that would include the information from all of those different ones. Instead of having 10 to 5 to 6 different entities, you just do one. Now, the things for you to actually qualify for it, of course, all of the companies before you can do the VAT grouping must be registered separately before applying for VAT. There are, however, some conditions that must be satisfied in order to be approved and operate as a group. For example, only companies can be grouped and they must not comprise a mix of Freeport licensees and non-Freeport licensees unless they've received or agreed to similar VAT treatment for all inputs and outputs. Group members must also have at least 51% common ownership by other group members or common parent company and be supported by shared operating services and qualify to declare consolidated financial statements, which is why I used the example of a franchise that would have a number of different businesses. But it doesn't have to be a franchise. If you're a limited company that has a number of other companies that fall under your umbrella, you can do the same thing. Was there a question? Okay. The audio is fine? Okay. Was that clear before I moved on? Okay. So, question a lot of persons ask, can I cancel or suspend my registration? So we had mentioned this during the introduction. You can cancel your registration, but of course it will be with certain conditions. So you can apply to cancel your VAT registration. Sorry. So you can apply to cancel your VAT registration on the following conditions. One, you've ceased conducting taxable activities, meaning basically you're not doing any business and your business isn't making any money. Two, your taxable sales activity has fallen below the threshold during the 12 months preceding the request for cancellation. You anticipate that the threshold would not be met in the next 12 months following your request for cancellation. Four, a minimum of 2 years has elapsed since the effective date of registration, meaning you can register last year and then decide, you know what, I don't feel like charging VAT. I don't feel like being registered for VAT. Once you've registered, it has to be at least 2 years from the effective date of you being registered. And for administrative purposes, the Department of Inland Revenue can use a threshold for at least 80,000 per year to say that you are below the threshold. And once your request has been submitted, the controller has about 14 days, up to about 21 days, I would say, in the act to make sure they respond. Now, you cannot deregister for VAT just because you decide you don't feel like paying VAT. We have persons that have, unfortunately, business and things have been slow and they just decide, well, I'm not registering for VAT. This is why we encourage persons to stay in communication with the Department of Inland Revenue. If you see that you're facing difficulties, and sometimes businesses have difficult years, communicate this to us, but you can't just not register, or better yet, I would say not file your VAT filing once you're registered, because you then will incur penalties and filing penalties. The easiest thing to do is just communicate with us what's going on so that any adjustments can be done, but you cannot just file. Say, for example, in the example that your business isn't making any revenue at the end of the day, then your sales would be what? Zero. So in that instance, you file the fact that you had zero sales instead of you actually not filing at all to show the fact that you're still registered. So you're still required to file, even if you don't have any revenue coming in because you're already registered, because you still have to meet those different requirements in order for you to send in a request to be completely deregistered. Is that clear? I see the question on your face.
This is only for persons that registered for VAT, right? This
Yes.
is not for persons who just have a
No.
business license.
This is somebody who is already registering for VAT, has been in the process of filing VAT, or even if you just started and just got registered and decide, okay, I don't feel like doing it, you can just deregister. Now, the other thing that we'll also talk about a little bit when we go through the process of the registration process is the two ways that you can actually be registered for VAT that persons sometimes actually do, which is actually a part of when they're registering for the first time for their business license. And some persons have unknowingly actually applied for them to be registered for VAT. So once you are registered, you have to actually write into us to show the fact that you are requesting to be deregistered from VAT. You cannot just not file. And like I used as the example, if you find yourself in an instance, whereas at the end of the day, that you see that, okay, I am not making any money, my business isn't doing anything, you are still going to be required to file, even if your filing amount is zero. Just to show at the end of the day, the fact that you've still filed to meet at least what is required of you inside the, and there's no penalty for that aspect once it's proven to be true. Versus someone who's filing zero and know they're making income at the end of the day. See, then you're becoming in a place where you have a compliancy issue, and that's a different rule. But in this instance, you can cancel, but there's a procedure to go along with. Okay, so again, who needs to register for VAT? Businesses regularly providing goods and services for payment, not a one-time sale. If you're over the threshold, it requires mandatory. Entities that always have to be required, which includes us, government entities, auctioners, public event promoters. Voluntary registration if you're below the threshold. If you have been found to be over the threshold and have not registered, forced registration, and then TIN-only registrations. Okay, so we're just going to take a quick, this is already 2:33. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break instead of a 10-minute break, and we will be right back to continue. What we're going to go into now after this is the registration process. Okay, and welcome back. So, we're going to continue this module talking about the VAT registration process, and we're looking at the online aspect of the process. So, what is OTS? OTAS stands for our Online Tax Administration System, the Bahamas official portal for registering, filing, and managing VAT and other taxes. Our website, of course, is inlandrevenue.finance.gov.bs. No, I did not look at the proper banner to remember the name of that. They keep teasing me about that. But it is managed by the Department of Inland Revenue. All VAT applications, returns, payments, and communications happen here. So our OTS simplifies the compliance aspect, and once you're all set up, all of your tax obligations, not just VAT, can be managed in one place, including the business license, registration, first time. So our OTS allows you to register for VAT. Sorry about that. I'm experiencing technical infidelity. Apparently, my old laptop is upset with my new laptop. So it allows you to register for VAT or other tax types, file returns, make payments, manage and update your account information, and communicate with the VAT department securely. We encourage persons at the end of the day to utilize the portal to be able to communicate with us because it allows us to also have a record of when you actually sent a message in, but it also allows you to have your paper trail. I like paper trail. So I encourage persons to message through the portal. Like I had said before, we had a client that had an issue. He came and said something to somebody word of mouth. Nobody has a record of it. Once you use the portal, even if you put in an ENQ and months goes by, that will always be in the system and someone can see when you made a request and when you messaged us at the end of the day. So before you begin, your prerequisites, and this is why we started off talking about the business license and how to apply aspect of it. You already have a business license, NA10, which is your taxpayer identification number, and you have a valid email address for your account verification. You've also gathered all of the necessary documents that you need before you start the process. So, just looking at some of the documents that you actually need. I tell you, Brandon, she can't, like, I cheat on her with another laptop. She doing me in this morning, this afternoon. Okay, so some of the prerequisites. First of all, a valid ID, your passport or NIB, an approved business license, proof of address, utility bill or lease, financial projections, especially if you're a new business, your banking details, and accurate industry code. So when we say accurate industry code, I've had clients and customers, unfortunately, when they have been registering for VAT, have maybe put in to be a family office when they are basically a marketing consultancy agency. This means inside the system that they've gotten charges up to about 75,000 or more because they put in the wrong thing when they're applying. So we encourage persons to pay attention. You don't want at the end of the day, if you're a business that doesn't fall under the Grand Bahama or Hawksbill agreement, to be clicking on that. If you're not a family office, you don't want to be clicking on that. If you're not a financial institution. So you want to make sure when you're actually registering that you choose the correct category that you fall under to make sure you're able to register your business accurately and correctly. So there are two ways that you can register for VAT online. The first one is during the business license registration process. When you are going through the process of registering your business for the first time, there is actually a check that you can actually click on that will actually allow you to register for VAT. It will also allow you to register for VAT accidentally if you're not paying attention when you're going through the tabs. So we encourage persons to please do not rush. Take your time, make sure you're going through and you're clicking on the right things and answering the right questions for yourself. Like I said previously about the VAT registration process, it's sometimes like one of those things, easy to get in and hard to get out. Because you have to show for a fact at the end of the day that you didn't intend to actually register for it. So We ask you when you're going through the process, and we're going to run a video in a second just to show the process of registering for a business license, that you make sure take your time in the registration process. The second is after your business is already in operation and you look like you're about to approach the threshold, mandatory, or from a voluntary perspective, you decide that at the end of the day that you want to actually register for VAT, you can also do it directly on the site. And of course, you have our main site, which is the inlandrevenue.finance.gov.bs site. And then you have the vat.revenue.gov.bs. So when you're registering on VAT online, the first thing, of course, you must have your business license. And you will apply to the Department of Inland Revenue via our portal. And of course, you will submit your business name, contact details, owner and director's ID if you're an incorporated business, the business address, whether it's a home-based business or a business that's a home-based business or commercial business, the proposed business activity, proof of address and relevant details, and you would wait for your business license to be approved and issued. And once you've gotten your business license, then you would also have your tax identification number. So let's just go through this video real quick.
Today, you will learn how to apply for a business license through the Department of Inland Revenue's online tax administration system. Start by visiting vat.revenue.gov.bs. Once on the home page, click Create Account. Complete the form, accept the terms and conditions, and then submit your registration. Next, log into your email to activate your account. Now, using the username and password you created, click Login. Then select Start Registration. Ensure that you have your personal NIB and NIB business registration information ready. Next, select Register a Person. Click Start. Then select Sole Trader. Then click Continue. Continue the eligibility form. Select Continue Registration and Continue Application. Now, complete form details, then click Save and Continue. Finally, upload all of the supporting documents. Click Save and Continue. Now read and agree to the declaration, and then click Submit Request. For more information, visit our website at inlandrevenue.finance.gov.bs.
All right. Brandon, are you able to rewind the video back to about 56 seconds? Trying to find what this mouse. No, I don't want you to play the whole video. There is up to about 56 seconds. Go through the video, you'll see where it's starting to show the screen for the business license. I want to show real quick the part whereas on the screen, I wanted you to see this. This is why I was adamant about bringing it up. Hopefully, it won't freak us out.
Today, you will learn how
Is
to apply
right.
for a business license through the Department of Inland.
Question is, do you expect your taxable supplies for the next 12 months to be more than 100,000? When you are going through the process of registering for your business for the first time, You also have the ability in the process of registering to either intentionally or unintentionally actually click on yes to that, and that will automatically at the same time register you for VAT while you're going through the process of registering for your business license. So we need persons to be aware of that so that they don't accidentally click yes on it thinking, oh yes, I am going to definitely be making more than 100,000. I'm going to be making this 5 million. I'm going to be making this 10 million, and I claim that for you. However, listen, I got to start at the bottom and make my way up. But you want to make sure that if you do that, you understand that at the same time you are registering for VAT. So this is why I humbly apologize about the technical issues, but I wanted to stop it for persons to actually see this on the video, that this is when you are registering for your business license for the first time. Also, you have the ability to intentionally or unintentionally register for VAT. So we need persons to be intentional about it. If your intent is that you will make that 100,000, I encourage that. I welcome that VAT revenue. But we want to make sure that at the end of the day, you do it knowingly and then you don't do it accidentally. And then when you're required to file for VAT, you're like, well, I didn't know I was registered for VAT. Okay? So I am currently registered as a sole trading. Does my business have to register for? Okay, so we talked about this on Monday as well, pertaining to the incorporation. Being incorporated or a limited company does not automatically mean that you have to register for VAT. The indicator of whether or not you register for VAT is your turnover and your turnover amount. If you are over the 100,000 or you intend to make revenue that goes over the 100,000, then you will be required to register for VAT. It has nothing to do with the fact of you being a limited company, a sole proprietor, or at the end of the day, even being a partnership. It is based on the revenue that's generated underneath the tin, not even just the one business, the revenue that's generated under the tin, which is why we mentioned earlier, if you see that you have 10 businesses, Granny Shoe Shine, Hair Shine, Teeth Shine, My Shine, and every other shine under the world, and all of those businesses collectively under that tin go over 100,000, then you will be required. It has nothing to do with the type of company it is, unless you're a government agency like us, an entertainer, or an auctioneer. Those ones are required regardless to actually register for VAT. The other question, I'll answer that one offline. They're asking about a holding company that just wants a tin. Would they need an NIB registration? Ms. Henfield, I'll follow up on that for you and answer back on that particular one. Okay, so let's continue on. I'm sorry, Brandon. Every time you fix the mic, I come right in and move the mic out of place. I'm convinced it's just the videos. It's just the videos. So let's go on. So like I said, along with the business license, there's also the process of actually registering directly onto our site. Let's see if this is going to play nice or if it's going to try to. Yeah. So, and thank you for being patient as we work through this. Like I said, this is a partnership. We want to make sure you get this information, and I will fight with tooth and nail to make sure that the information gets to you. Okay. So the other way that you can also register for VAT is by accessing our OTS portal. And of course, there are two ways that you can access the OTS portal. One is going to inlandrevenue.finance.gov.bs. And when you click on register, it will bring you to the page that will show you where you can start. And the other one is just going directly to vat.revenue.gov.bs. Try my hand on this one.
The Department of Inland Revenue is pleased to announce the release of the new online tax administration site. Do you need help accessing your account in the new online tax administration portal? Well, we've got you covered. Your OTAS accounts with tax information has been successfully migrated onto the new system. Old accounts without active business licenses or VAT registrations have not been migrated and are required to create a new account. Activation links have been sent via email for all migrated accounts. Click this link to begin the activation process. Then, on the activation page, fill in your OTAS username and email and click Verify. For usernames consisting of special characters, such as a dash or underscore, you must now enter your username without it. For example, if your username is John_Doe at exclamation, your username would now simply be John Doe. After verifying your username and email, you will now have to set up a new password. Once your password has been reset, you can log in to vat.revenue.gov.bs. To access more videos like this, visit our website, YouTube channel, or social media pages.
Learn.
Starting to feel like Brandon. I don't need to put videos inside my presentations. Okay. So just waiting for those persons online to catch up. Okay. All right. So when you start the process from our OTS, whether you go from inlandrevenue.finance.gov.bs or vat.revenue.gov.bs, both will bring you to this page where you can start the process to open a new account or to create a new account. If you already have an account, it'll enable you to log in. If you don't, then you'll be able to actually create an account from this space. Okay, so let's go through it step by step. The first step, of course, is to visit our portal and to go to inlandrevenue.gov.bs, click login or register at the top right, and then you can directly go to vat.revenue.gov.bs. Like I said, whether you went directly to the inlandrevenue.finance.gov.bs or the vat.revenue, both would bring you back to the same page that I just showed a minute ago. That step 2 would then be to create an OTS user account or user profile. If it's a new account, choose user account. You would enter your name as shown in the video, your email address, your phone number, and then you would create a secure password. And then you would have a verification that would be sent to your email. I'm praying we get to the point that we get SMS texts as well. We're working on it. I pray and it's speaking it into manifestation. Okay. Then your third step would be to log in and select register for a tax type. You would go to your dashboard and click My Applications, register for a tax type, and select value added tax from the drop down. Now, this is important to pay note of because when you are registering for all of our different tax types, you would have to go through the same process. So even as your business license, well, at this point in time, we would hope that with you already having your business license, you would have already gone through this process to at least know to create the OTS account. But you have to make sure that you are selecting value added tax because you have other tax types. So you want it to be whereas at the end of the day, you select the wrong tax type and then you come back and say, well, Mr. Todd, I didn't register for my account. Come to find out that you registered for something that you weren't actually applying for. Or complete the VAT application form. And this includes, and this is why having your business license at this point is important because you'll need your business details, your TIN, your name, your NIB number, the nature of your business, your contacts. And if it's your home-based business, then of course the information for your home-based business, or if you're a commercial, your commercial information. Directors or owners, their full names and contact, their nationality and status. There's no hidden names inside these businesses. When you're registering for VAT, we need to know who the directors are on the business, if it's a limited company, as well as who the directors are on the business, if it's a company in general. And then, of course, your financial and taxable activity and your banking information, including your bank name, account number, and your branch. Step 5 would be to upload your supporting documents, your business license, valid government issued ID. Let me say it again, valid government issued ID, such as your passport or NIB. You cannot use your school ID at the end of the day or your ID from one of your special clubs, whether it's Kiwanis, Toastmasters, or anything else. And as a proud Toastmaster, you cannot use those IDs. We need a government issued ID. I know someone who tried to argue with the person, tell them, well, this is my ID and this me. That was not government issued. So, along with that, your proof of your business address, whether it's your utility or your lease, your financial projections for startups, and any other documents requested by the system or the VAT registration officer. We encourage you to review and submit your application. Check all fields for accuracy and attach all required documents. Let me say this again. Review, check, review, check, review, check. It's the same thing I said at the beginning with making minor errors. You will receive an acknowledgement notice and reference number for tracking and await approval for your VAT certificate to be issued, usually within a few business days. So, common mistakes to avoid. First of all, using your personal TIN or your NIB instead of your business TIN. You have to make sure it is the correct one. Don't use your NIB, use your business TIN. Uploading low quality or incorrect attachments that cannot be seen clearly, mismatched business names or addresses. Come back to the same thing I said when you're registering for your business license, you want to make sure that the information is correct. From your trade name to your business license need, and definitely if you're filing for your VAT registration, you want to make sure that the name is correct. If it is incorrect, this is why we encourage you to message us through the portal so that the corrections can be done as quickly as possible. You don't want to go through the process of doing all of your business and everything, and when you have to file for your VAT, your inputs, the name that is there is incorrect. It's the same thing with dealing with another business that deals with business that is registered for VAT. That when you get your inputs from them, that your name on their receipts or invoices is also correct with the correct TIN number. Those things are important. And again, double check every detail. So let me say it, check, check. Say it with me, check, 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 check. Make sure you check every detail to make sure that it is correct. I cannot stress that enough to make sure that is correct. Simple mistakes can either one, delay your approval, or worse, cause your registration to be rejected. And not even just that, when you are then filing, cause the fact that at the end of the day, the information that you submit is not lining up or is not correct, which will cause an issue for you. So after submission, you want to monitor your email and OTS dashboard for updates. And once approved, download your VAT certificate, print it, proudly display it. I was supposed to put proudly in front of display. Proudly display it at your business location and start issuing VAT compliant invoices. Now, let me say this again, and I will say this for every trainee. If the person is charging VAT and they do not have a VAT certificate, firstly, you do not have to pay them VAT. And secondly, let us know so one of our nice compliance officers may make a happy little visit to them to see how they're doing and check upon them and their family and their auntie and their uncle and find them at the same time. You are required, if you are registered for VAT, to display your VAT certificate. If you do not have a VAT certificate, that means at the end of the day, you are legally not able to charge VAT. And that means it is unfair to both the business persons and the consumers for anybody that is doing this practice at the end of the day, which is why we have our lovely persons in collections, compliance, and everything else to make sure that these persons are compliant so that they're fair to other businesses that are operating within the law and to our consumers at the end of the day. You can imagine me going to my barber. He ain't got VAT certificate, charging me VAT, and got my hair cut and he ain't line up right. Boy, I tell you, Jesus, pray for me. Yes, ma'am. We appreciate your patience. Ain't nobody can see.
Okay, in module 1, we was trying to have this question answered because I know there are so many persons out there that may not be up to date on the topic of having a VAT certificate to collect VAT. Like you said, you go to your barber, imagine him, he ain't got the certificate. A lot of persons out there don't have it, but they are collecting VAT, and consumers don't know. They don't know, and the consumer don't know. So it's like the blind leading the blind right there. So at the end of the day, how do you get the VAT certificate to collect your VAT? And it's a two-phase question. And the other part is, if I am not collecting VAT, how do I pay VAT to the government, if at all?
So the question, again, persons, if they didn't hear the question, was how do you get your VAT certificate? That's the first one. And the second one is, if you're not collecting VAT, you said, how do you pay VAT to the government? Well, the first part of that is you have to be registered for VAT in order to be charging VAT or to be collecting on your inputs. If you're not registered, you cannot charge anyone for VAT. And if you are charging someone for VAT and you're not registered, that's why I'm saying very clearly over the airways, that means one of our nice compliance persons will come to you because it's an illegal action. There are fines and penalties up to the point of having your business possibly shut down or fined for the fact that you are charging VAT and you are not registered with the Department of Inland Revenue. And I'm saying this also to consumers because we need our consumers to understand their rights. If someone is charging you VAT, and first of all, the VAT certificate should be displayed, and it's not displayed. If you feel like being polite, you can ask them to see it. And if they cannot produce it, you do not have to pay that VAT because they do not have a legal right to charge you VAT based on the law. Now, as far as applying for the VAT registration, this is why we're going through all of this wonderful training now. So this is a part of the process of showing persons how they can register along with who needs to be registered. And even if you're not over the threshold, like I said, with the voluntary registration, you also have the ability to voluntarily register if you want. Now, if you are under the threshold, but you're still a VAT registrant, then you can both charge for VAT as well as you can actually get inputs back from VAT for other persons that are registered for VAT. That is the only way. If you're registered, you can charge and you can apply for VAT inputs. If you're not registered, you have no legal right to charge anyone for VAT. And if you are collecting the government's money, because it is the government's money, one of my nice friends, when they come for their hot cross buns, will be coming looking for you.
Straight now. Okay? At the end of the day, I don't have that certificate. When I do my filing, whatever the VAT says I must pay, I have to pay that.
Well, you in the right place.
All
I'd say
right?
it like
So
that.
this is what is confusing me. And I'm sure a lot of other persons. I don't charge VAT at all and have never charged VAT from 2015 to now.
My
But I
question,
have paid
my
a
question would
significant
be,
amount of funds.
she isn't on camera, right? Because I don't want her on camera for this question. Good. So my question would simply be at the end of the day, if your revenue is over the 100,000 and you know it's over the 100,000, then as quickly as you can, let one of our persons, whether it's from our general processing department, client services department, assist you with getting the process completed, or if you've already started the process, to make sure that they're able to get it completed for you so you can get your certificate.
I never even knew about the process until I decided to come to these trainings.
And this is
Until you've
And this is why we're doing the training. See, we want persons to be knowledgeable about it because unfortunately the law says ignorance is not an excuse. So even if you didn't know, the fact remains this is why we're doing these courses now to educate and inform persons about it so they know the process to go through. And this is why we're encouraging persons to share the YouTube links freely. There's no cost, there's no charge for any of the courses we're doing. You can let the persons know at the end of the day, we give you some nice free cookies, warm water, and some hot tea to go along with it to take the gas out the way. Hey, but we want persons at the end of the day to make sure they're able to get the information and their questions answered.
long run, I need to come in and sit with somebody who will straighten me out, right?
Yes.
Because I do have a case in here now that I've been dealing with for about 4 years and can't seem to get it straightened out.
Before
So
you leave,
I've dealt with way over a dozen people down here. I have all the names that I've dealt with. And from 2022, I cannot get this vexing situation solved.
I'd say let's deal with it offline. Before you leave, let's deal with it. Any other questions offline or online before we move on? Other question.
I just have a question. Would we be doing a practical aspect of this?
Yes. So we'll be doing the practical tomorrow where we actually go through the actual website and show the process from both ends, from the business license aspect where you go through and you register, and then we'll do it where we go from directly from the VAT.revenue.process and show that how you register. And we'll make sure when we send the slides, along with the steps, possibly maybe some screenshots to make sure you can actually see the process. Like we said, this is information we want the public to have.
Okay, and the next question is for those who voluntarily sign up for VAT. They're still paying the 10%, right? That's required, even if it's under the threshold of 100,000.
Remember now, there are two standard rating registrations you can do. There is the standard and then there's the 6%. Now, let me clarify with the question. When you say paying, you're talking about what you're charging to your clients or what you pay to other persons, because it really depends on what the item is. Remember now, we have the 10%, which is the standard rate. We have the 5%, depending on what supplies and stuff you get if it's non-prepared food items that humans consume. And I got to throw that in there because dog food don't count for that. Someone asked me that question the other day. In addition to that, you have zero-rated items. So all of that is what you have to consider at the end of the day. But as far as your filing goes, if you are a business that is under the flat rate, then you know you use the 6.5%. You will still charge 10%. You will still charge the 10%, but when you file, you'd use the 6.5. If you're under the standard, then you would use the 10% both for your output and your input.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So if there are no more questions, let's just do a quick review. So step by step, first of all, we would visit inlandrevenue.finance.gov.bs. Secondly, we'd create an OTAS account. Thirdly, we'd log in and register for a tax type. Fourth, we'll choose the value-added tax. 5, we'd complete the VAT application form. 6, we'd upload the required documents. 7, we'd review and submit the application. And 8, we'd await approval and then download our certificate, which we'll proudly display everywhere we go. Take it like what you're taking your baby pictures. Okay? Take your picture, just like how you got your baby picture, take it with you, but have it displayed everywhere you go. So, just some quick reminders. Again, we encourage persons to check out inlandrevenue.finance.gov.bs because pertaining to VAT as well as all of our other areas, business license, real property, you will find information on the site for legal information, industry-specific guides, VAT Act, the amendments, and as these things are updated, we also put them on the site. In addition to that, we encourage persons when you are doing your VAT filing, please make sure you have the correct banking information. There is at least 60-something plus government bank accounts, and for the department, I'm sure over 10 accounts. So you want to make sure you have the right banking information, the right bank account, so when you do your filing, it goes to the right account. And if an error is made by the banks, because the banks do make errors as well, you have your proof so that it can be corrected. In addition to that, we encourage you to monitor the portal. This is our means of communication with you and vice versa. And like I say, I like paper trail. So if you put something in the portal, at whatever point in time, it will show and reflect the date and the time if you need assistance or something else. Like my other client had come and said, they said something to somebody who said something to somebody else, who gave it to Stan, who gave it to Dan, who gave it to Rand, and it never got back to us. So we want to make sure at the end of the day that whatever it is that you say is documented and we're able to assist you in that regards. So our key takeaways for today and tomorrow's training, first of all, know who must register. Every business, again, that's over 100,000, and it is on your TIN, not the business license alone. Entities like government agencies, auctioneers, and public entertainment promoters must register regardless of income. Understand the different tax types, the mandatory, voluntary. Please don't fall into the forced registration. And then the TIN-only registration. Also, at the same time, using our OTAS system, both to register as well as a means of communicating with us. Gather the right documents, so we'll be going over a little bit more tomorrow. The right documents, avoid common mistakes, and then what your responsibility is once you are finished, you register with your VAT, and you have your nice certificate to display like the newborn baby it will be. So we just want to thank you for your time and your participation. Again, We remind persons once the modules are completed, we will send out the PDFs with the presentations along with the YouTube links. And if you have not registered already, we'll invite you to please register. So with that also has the scheduling of when the other modules will also be. But also when we have new and updated trainings, it'll enable us to also communicate with you and let you know when we're doing other additional trainings. Along with what we were doing for VAT, we're most likely going to do the same thing for real property and business license at different months. And we want persons to have the information that they need. So thank you again. And I'd like to close the same way we opened if there are no more questions. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your grace and mercy. We pray, oh God, as we depart from one another, that you would cover us and keep us, guide us, and let this information go by your grace and power, Father. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Thank you again, and you have a good day.